Hey, Joe Bob Briggs, still here. Whenever I see the end of The Exorcist, I always wonder whatever happened to Lee J. Cobb. You know, the creepy detective who's always hanging around. You don't see him anywhere in the last part of the movie. Are we assuming he just doesn't care to know how the two priests died? Anyway, the movie was originally 20 minutes longer, but William Friedkin cut it way down in the editing room, and ever since then, the writer, William Peter Blatty, has been kind of ticked off. He keeps begging the studio to put out a special cut with the original footage in, but Friedkin doesn't like the idea, so it probably won't ever happen. But Blatty's mad because a couple of scenes were cut out that he thinks explain more of the story, like why the devil chooses to possess a 12-year-old innocent girl. But anyway, it's still one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and it spawned 2 sequels. And we're going to watch the first sequel in just a minute. It's one of the worst horror movies ever made. First, though, I want to remind you that next week on Monstervision, we have 2 classics. First, Night of the Living Dead, not the original one from the 60s, but the remake by Tom Savini that I think is just a tremendous flick. When the zombies rise, people listen. And then the second feature is Wes Craven's most cartoony horror flick, I think, Swamp Thing, starring Adrienne Barbeau and her 2 enormous talents, getting hosed down in the swamp. Right now, though, we're going to watch Exorcist 2, The Heretic, starring Richard Burton and a 4 years older Linda Blair and a very creepy Louise Fletcher. They begged William Friedkin to direct this thing. They asked William Peter Blatty to write the sequel. They both said, no way, Jose, and so we ended up with a story about a brain electrode mind meld machine that they use on Linda Blair to try to find out where it is, deep, deep down in her subconscious, that evil dwells. It's actually where the ancient primitive demon Isuzu dwells. That's the name of the demon. Anyway, they spent millions and millions of dollars on this baby. They hired John Borman to direct it. They based it on French philosophy. That's right, I'll repeat that. They based this movie on French philosophy. I'll explain it at the break if you're still here. Those drive-in totals are 4 dead bodies, Spanish demon casting, flaming third world character actor, brain strobing, flaming baby doll, 1 African locust swarm, 1 American locust swarm, 4 exorcisms, Steadicam flying locust vision, rhythmic Muslim dancing, stoning, iron spike through the foot, red ball spitting, demon heart ripping, gratuitous Ned Beatty. 2 stars, check it out, and I'll see you later on down the TNT highway tonight, so roll it. The ancient primitive demon is not really called Isuzu, but I can't understand what they're saying, so it sounds like a Suzu. Maybe it is a Suzu, I don't know. He lives in hell, and his transmission sucks. Isuzu. Hell has dual airbags. Name Isuzu. He's a demon, but he gets good mileage. I'm just babbling now.
And now, back to Joe Bob's Last Call on TNT.
Okay, now, you're probably wondering what just happened here. Well, basically what happened is that Louise Fletcher and Linda Blair and Richard Burton all put electrodes on their heads and held hands and went into some kind of hypno-trance where they could all root around in one another's brains. Now, why would they do that? Well, it's because the screenwriter, William Goodhart, and the director, John Borman, want you to know about this guy. All right? Now, I can't say it, so I'll just spell it out for you. Pierre. That tells us he's French, right? Teilhard. Okay? Dieu, this is his last name. Dieu, that's just the thing you put in a French name. Chardin, extra French name to go with Teilhard. Okay, the whole movie is based on the writings of Pierre Teilhard du Chardin, a French philosopher. Now, in case you've misplaced the French philosophy text that you normally keep there next to the Corona, I'd like to read what they say in the Exorcist 2 press kit about Pierre Teilhard du Chardin. Teilhard, the name in the middle, see, that's his last name. All that stuff down there at the bottom, that's just decoration, okay? This is hard to explain, but I'm going to go to the trouble to do it for you. Teilhard has effected a 3-fold synthesis of the material and physical world with the world of the mind and spirit, of the past with the future, and of variety with unity, the many with the one. You got that so far? This is from the official studio press kit, all right? Believing that man and nature would eventually achieve a oneness with God, Teilhard agreed with Nietzsche's view that man is unfinished and must be surpassed or completed. Teilhard sought to link the evolution of man with the concept of energy, in this contest, what he called psychic energy. Most crucially, as Sir Julian Huxley points out, Teilhard had a conviction of the supreme importance of personality. Now, let me explain to you what a press kit is for. A press kit is a folder full of photos and written material such as this that is sent to the press or media, to wit, people like me, in order to get people like you to go to the movie. So, I think we'll enjoy things a lot more now that we know this. Let us continue. Professor Krupe, if you will roll the movie at this time, as Pierre Teilhard du Chardin once said, I think I recall this from my philosophy days, the moon is in the 7th house. The dog barks at midnight. How about them Packers?
And now, back to Joe Bob's Last Call on TNT.
Oh, The Exorcist 2. It was literally laughed off the screen. It opened on June 17th, 1977 in 700 theaters, and on June 18th, the director John Boorman said he was changing the last scene and they were going to pull it out of the theaters and put out a new version. And on June 27th, they completed the new version. They tested it in a theater in the Westwood area of L.A., and the audience did not laugh at it, and they considered that a victory. So they kept talking about re-releasing it in the new version, but it was too late. So the only people who saw the new version were the people in Europe and Japan. There are actually 3 different versions of the movie, but the one we're showing is the original theatrical release in all its awfulness, in keeping with our policy of only showing the original theatrical release. Now, what's interesting is that about 2 months after it came out, there was this whole big backlash by people claiming it was actually a misunderstood masterpiece, and so people started going to it as a form of reverse snobbery. So, and hey, I love John Boorman myself, but any man who made Zardoz will always be a master in my book. But look, we're 35 minutes into the movie, and I'm already totally confused. So here, maybe this will help. Pierre Teilhard du Chardin. Just think about him while you're watching. Okay, go. Who's going to Washington now? What's the deal? Sharon's going to Washington now. Kitty Wynn is going to Washington. Why is she going to Washington? We don't know. We don't even know what she was doing in the first movie. You know, remember Kitty Wynn, Panic in Needle Park with Al Pacino, 1971. Just put those brain tongs on me. That's fine. Study my memory. I know these things. You know why I'd never put a brain clamp on like that, though? Ex-wives. They're still in there somewhere. You'd be calling them up from the dead. Woo! Okumu can lead me to Vizuzu. Is that what Richard Burton said? Did he say that line, Kokumu can lead me to Vizuzu? We got your Kokumu, we got your Vizuzu, we got your James Earl Jones dressed up like a drag queen at Mardi Gras, we got a Steadicam strapped to the back of a giant locust. What does it all mean? You know, only Pierre knows for sure. Do we have plenty of beer back there? This is one of those 2 six-pack nights, you know. Bring some tall boys out here, all right? Pierre. Teilhard du Chardin. Now we're getting all this Catholic stuff about how the tribes in Africa mix in their primitive rituals with the communion ceremony. And so sometimes they accidentally let demons into the church. While they were making the movie, John Boorman hired this guy, Corrado Pallenberg, who was an expert on the Vatican, and Linda Blair says he would go around whispering stuff to the actors, telling them how to do their parts, which I'm sure Richard Burton and James Earl Jones really appreciated, since between them, they've worked on just about every theatrical stage in the world and won every acting award in the world. And actually, I don't think either one of them ever won the Oscar, but It was Louise Fletcher who won the Oscar, but they won every other dang thing. And Richard Burton especially was not a happy camper on this movie. But how could he be? I mean, he had to do 3-minute scenes about... So, let's review, shall we? We have Pierre Teilhard du Chardin, French paleontologist philosopher. We have Nietzsche's Theories of the Soul, not to be confused with the former linebacker for the Green Bay Packers, Ray Nitschke. We have Visuzu or Isuzu, depending on how much whiskey the cast had the night before they do the scenes. And we can also translate that for our Israeli viewers. We have Kokumu or Kukumu, who wears funny hats and says, "This is CNN." And we have Kokomo, a town in Indiana. So, I think we're ready now for the Heretic, Exorcist 2. Watch, somebody's going to write me a letter now. Joe Bob, I was only half listening when you did that thing the other night, but did you say they shot the Exorcist 2 in Kokomo? See, that's why I have the visual aids. A lot of these people majored in motel management at the community college, you know? Okay, are we back? Oh, did I just see Ned Beatty in this movie? Let's not dwell on that, okay? All right, well, Richard Burton is winging his way towards Kokumu, who will lead him to Visuzu. It's time for Joe Bob's advice to the hopeless, and to help me out is the lovely TNT mail girl, looking perky as always. Perky, nubile, perky and nubile. That's you.
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know what it means. I just like to say it. Perky and nubile.
Well, you look very nubile.
Well, thank you very much. I'm feeling very nubile. What do you got?
I have a letter here. It's from Sally Brannon of Murray, Kentucky.
All right. Let's go. We're so perky. Dear Joe Bob, I must admit I was missing out on a whole facet of movie viewing until I happened upon your show the night you were showing Swamp Thing. I was captivated by your charming, irreverent wit. Hear this? Since then, I have thoroughly enjoyed watching you every Friday night, sometimes on tape delay if I have plans. Are you telling me you actually brought me a letter from somebody who likes the show? What, how do I deserve this? Anywho, I just wanted to get a few things off my large womanly chest. First of all, you said it was your job to get us to think. Well, this you have most certainly done. This is something I strive to do with my students. I teach at 2 regional universities near the Kentucky-Tennessee border, and I've thought about making you required viewing for my composition students, since you show how being analytically minded doesn't have to be a drag. Are you listening to this, honey? Required viewing? The movies you have on Monstervision also often deal in the archetypes we teachers try so hard to get our students to notice, but it is in a much more palatable form on your show. Or is it? I guess gore is more palatable for some than others. I also just wanted you to know that there are more than just women inmates who admire your quirky style. Since I come, at least partially, from the world of academia, you are assured that not only the students are your fans. I hope Ted is paying you what you're truly worth. If you're ever in the area, feel free to look me up. Want to speak to my class on the value of B horror flicks. It would be an honor for us. Late night kudos, Sally Brannon. Do you hear this, honey? I have been invited to speak at a university to teach impressionable young people how to write. Aren't you impressed?
I think she just wants to meet you.
Well, yes. Of course she wants to meet me. It's undeniable she wants to meet me. She finds me uncommonly attractive, but it's because of my intellect.
That's very amusing.
All right. I knew that you would react jealously, but Sally, sweetie, let me get this straight now. You're going to teach Monstervision in a university? Don't you know what happens to professors in horror movies? They always die, except in the movies where the professor is the killer, and then he still dies at the end. So, anyhow, all I got to say is, don't invite me unless you want me to show up, because people have written to me in the past. They say, Joe Bob, come have a beer. So I go to their house to have a beer. They'll act like it's a big deal when I get there, so. But I'm going to start working on my speech. I think I'll lecture, oh, I know. I'll lecture on Pierre Teilhard du Chardin and his influence on the modern horror film. Okay, roll it. Is it mere stage blood, or is it the expression of an inner angst? Is it the equivalent in the cinema of making fart noises under your armpit? I believe so.
And now, back to Joe Bob's Last Call on TNT.
Okay, so now we got a science experiment going on. We got locusts out the wazoo. Ooh, scary grasshoppers. See, what happened there is he called on Isuzu to lead him to Kokumu, and Kokumu healed him from sticking a steel spike through his foot, and he showed him the locusts. So now he can what? I don't know. What the heck is going on? Who wrote this? I'm sorry. I know who wrote it. Pierre Teilhard wrote it. Okay, just bring me an old Milwaukee and 6 Excedrin, okay? All right, let's go. It's like the 21st mile of a marathon. The body's given out, but the mind can overcome. We know this from the theories of... Oh, John Borman made a speech right before this movie came out, and he predicted that parts of it would be so unbearable. This is a direct quote. He said this movie would be so unbearable that the audience may not be able to watch it. Why didn't we listen? Well, Variety called this movie Gidget Meets Mothra. New York Magazine called it the stupidest major movie ever made. And Warner Brothers, 2 weeks after it opened, sent replacement reels to all the theaters and said, please get rid of the ending you're showing and stick this new reel on the end. And 20 years later, TNT bought the rights to it. So isn't that amazing? All right, here's the reel that John Borman didn't want you to see. The fascinating conclusion to Exorcist 2, The Heretic. I think the devil is inside Richard Burton. You know how you can tell? He's in New York. He's rushing to get to that old house in Washington, D.C., and he takes Amtrak.